I'm going to pause there and hand over to Joe and Jenny now, who are going to talk through one of these innovations that they've been working on 5 years into their local area coordination journey. And this is a story that we've called normally From Gas Warrants to Good Lives. Jenny, if you're there, I'll hand over to you to talk through, and I can do the buttons as well if that's helpful.
Yep, that'd be really helpful. Thanks, Nick. I don't know if, before I sort of launch into this presentation, I don't know if Joe wanted to kind of chip in with anything about our relationship and work with the network before I start. No.
Go into the story, Jenny, and we can say a little bit about that afterwards, I think.
Okay, so just to start with a bit of kind of background context to this, back in 2020 we as a team were sort of thrown into the COVID pandemic, and we decided to start capturing some silver linings. It was a time of sort of rapid system change, and we wanted to capture some of the kind of silver linings of this really difficult time. And towards the end of 2020, we got together to have a look at all these silver linings we'd captured and formulate a system change plan. And this was sort of born out of an idea I'd had as the senior on the team. I found I was leading on quite a lot of the system change work, and really wanted to involve more of the local area coordinators, more of the wider team in taking some ownership and leadership around that system change work and those system change projects. So it's an integral part of the local area coordination model, but something it felt like we could do more around. And fuel poverty was a really broad area that came out of that system change plan. And that was back in 2020. So that was well before we knew we were going to go into this cost of living crisis and this energy crisis. We were looking at fuel poverty as a real issue facing a number of residents in York. Can we go to the next slide, Nick? So part of this broader issue of fuel poverty was one of the local area coordinators, Siobhan, who works in a city centre ward. She'd encountered a lot of council housing tenants who were having their gas cut off. And some of these people that she was encountering, they'd had their gas cut off for not a short amount of time, but a number of years. And that meant they had no heating, no hot water in their properties. And you can imagine the impact on their quality of housing and their quality of health. So she talked to myself as a manager and the wider team about this as well. And we discovered that there was sort of two issues linked to the gas being capped off or cut off. Gas was being disconnected after tenants had failed to respond to requests to test equipment. So every local authority has to do an annual gas safety check. And some of these people, for whatever reason, weren't willing to let somebody in their home, or they weren't responding to those letters and those appointments. The other main reason was tenants having insufficient credit on their meter to run enough gas to complete a test. So they were letting these engineers in and these inspectors in, but they were obviously struggling to make ends meet, so they didn't have enough money on their meters. One of the cases, one of the really, really sad stories that we came across was somebody who'd had the gas capped off for 3 years, I think. And when we got to the bottom of it, it was because they lacked £3 on their meter to do the safety check. So if they'd been able to top up an extra £3, they wouldn't have ended up in the position they were in. Next slide, please. Oh, so this meant that people were not only becoming distressed, but they were left in cold, damp conditions, leading to poor health. So we shared similar stories across the team. And we decided to share those stories, as Nick was describing, share those stories back into the system with colleagues in the housing sector who were responsible for carrying out these gas safety checks. We also worked with the wider financial inclusion team to determine preventative measures and look at what we could do kind of further upstream to proactively reach these people far before they got to the point where they were having their gas cut off. This linked to sort of wider work we were already doing with the financial inclusion team. Next slide, please, Nick. So we identified a number of really practical things we could do to prevent people getting their gas capped off. And one of these really practical, simple solutions was if engineers had some money, some petty cash with them when they went out to do the checks, they could top up the meter. So that's second reason why gas meters were getting cut off and people were having their gas capped off. We could overcome that by simply allowing the engineers to have access to petty cash and a kitty to top up these meters. And this, you know, this simple measure, which we've now got in place, you know, there's been a process change. They have this credit now, they have this petty cash that the rest of the repairs team do. So it's quite easy to put in place. But the implications of implementing that really tiny change have been huge. So we've reduced the amount of people that are getting the gas capped off. We're reducing the amount of people that are getting further drawn into the system. We're saving the council time, resources and money, and ultimately saving people from progressing to further enforcement action. The team that carry out the gas safety checks, which sit within the repairs team in housing, are now much more aware of local area coordination of what we do. So they have started to introduce people to us. We've taken it a bit of a step further than that, in that we are now setting up a process which will become embedded, where they will share lists of people with us. So people, when they're coming on their radar very, very early, because they're not able to contact them for these gas safety checks, they'll be able to share those lists. We'll be able to take a proactive, much more human, softer approach to get in touch and just ask if these people need any other help and support. We had a hunch that having your gas capped off, or these teams not being able to get in touch with these people to go in and do these gas safety inspections, could be an indicator that there was a lot more going on in somebody's life. And that hunch has turned out to be very right. The people that we've been connected to through this work are very much people who are marginalised at the edge of our communities. So this work is enabling us to do what really feels like the right thing and really proactively go out and reach these people who otherwise would be marginalised and not included in their communities. Next slide, please. So we've been able to get alongside those people. So it's not just about the fuel poverty, it's not just about getting the gas reconnected. We, using our approach as local area coordinators, we've been able to look at the wider underpinning issues that have been impacting on fuel poverty. And also taking that strength-based approach to explore their wider vision of a good life and how we can achieve that. Next, please. So what's underpinned this? So what are the main factors of the local area coordination model that are key to this example? So local area coordinators are employed by councils. As Nick was saying before, we have one foot in the system and one foot in communities. So we're employed by the council, but also seen as quite separate. So we're able to build that trusted relationship with people and take a slightly different approach alongside statutory functions and enforcement services. And we take a whole person approach that's underpinned by the principles and the intentional design that we've heard so much about. We've got the time and the local presence to fully understand and unpick all of those things that could be happening in somebody's life that aren't just about fuel poverty, that aren't just about going in and doing a gas safety inspection. And we work collaboratively with people and communities right at the centre of what we do. And finally, one of the things that's key to this, and it's key to all of our system change work, which intrinsically becomes linked together, because this example is intrinsically linked to the work we've been doing with housing colleagues and the relationships we've built there, the work we've been doing around financial inclusion. We share stories, we intentionally share stories to really raise awareness of the issues and the impact that the really real human stories and the impact that they have on people in our communities to improve and change processes. One of the stories that we shared that really had an impact and really created a turning point in this example was the man that I referred to earlier on, who had his gas capped off for 3 years, who, if he'd had £3 more on his meter, wouldn't have had his gas capped off, would probably be in a very different situation. But as it turned out, he had 3 years of no heating, no hot water, was unable to wash, was unable to have a good quality of housing, a good quality of health in those 3 years. And that ultimately led to him developing poor skin integrity and sepsis. And he had 3 of his toes amputated. He had a hospital admission, 3 of his toes amputated. So now he can't walk. His quality of life, it's been catastrophic for him, the impact on his quality of life. And that could have been prevented if those engineers 3 years ago had had that small kitty and been able to top up that meter.
Thank you, Jenny. I think that's a very, very powerful place to finish your presentation on there. Thank you so much for sharing that. Eddie, I don't know if we've got any more time left on the clock with our bit there, but we've got Joe as well, who might want to add a couple of bits in before we... Joe?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that very powerful story and piece of system change work that Jenny's just been talking about. It really reflects for me the importance of the local area coordination model of, as Jenny was explaining and Nick, of the coordinators being employed by the council. So they've got a relationship with the system, but more importantly, they have a relationship that's very trusted with people that they are walking alongside. So it's the importance of relationships right the way across the system. And I think what we've seen is that through the power of stories, you've seen a more common set of values and principles evolve and become the way York wants to do business, that is more person-centered. And that set of values then begins to anchor York as a place. And you begin to see then teams, individuals, people all acting in a way that is more about a culture of openness, collaboration and learning that's really then allowing us to tackle these complex issues that we face in new ways. So it is about system change, it is about innovation, but it's about creating that space to welcome some of our colleagues and partners to work in a different way. Because there's got to be a better way, and it's about people being connected to people and seeing the individual as opposed to what the diagnosis is or their inability to pay for a basic service such as having your gas connection linked up rather than losing your toes and terrible health as a result of that. But yeah, it's the point for me is we've had local area coordination in York now, as we said, since the team started to be recruited in May 2017 and had a running of 10 months prior to that to raise awareness in the system of what we were about. And we are constantly trying to build relationships with different parts of the system, but then to connect the life stories from the people that we walk alongside to support that wider system change. It has to be seen as an integral part of our system, our service land, as a thing that is viewed as being nice to have, because this is the way forward. Yeah, as I think we all probably know, there was so much that resonated with myself and Jenny and Nick, no doubt, when Yvonne was talking from Singapore, actually. So I can remember the start of the program and where you were at, but we're still going on that sort of innovation journey. But one of the key points of reflection for me is when you get more people operating in this way that is strength-based, is anchored by a set of values, you'll be more likely to achieve those outcomes collectively, and for everybody to celebrate that and realize that's the better way to do things to support people to have a good life. Leadership of it is key, both political system, but also leadership from people as well. And I'll shut up at that point.